Our next entity in the timeline of the exile to Jesus is a person called Nehemiah. Nehemiah wrote one of the books of the Bible, Book of Nehemiah, and we are going to get most of the information of this period right at the end of the 70 years that the prophet Jeremiah prophesied how long the sons of Israel would be in captivity until their release, 70 years, and the 70 years have now apparently gone by, and Nehemiah is instrumental in the return of the sons of Israel. It begins with Nehemiah being in Persia. It says the words of Nehemiah, son of Hakaliah, English, Halkiu, and it came to pass in the month Haselev, Chislev, of the 20th year, probably the 20th year of Cyrus, that I was in Susa Avirah. Susa is one of the major cities of the Persians at that time, where the rulers of the Persian Empire resided with his palace and so forth. So this is where Nehemiah was, right at the center of all the action. And there came Anani, one of my brothers, he and men of Judah, and I asked them concerning the Jews having survived who were left behind from the captivity, and concerning Jerusalem. So there was a lot of Jews still left in Judea, and they were treated harshly by the peoples that were there that were not Jews apparently. Maybe, and they were taken away from Jerusalem and so forth, basically becoming farmers and so forth, because that's what it says in the last book, I think it was Arthasasta, about that. And they said to me, well, the ones remaining behind, surviving from the captivity there in the place, are among great wickedness and in scorning. They're being made fun of, scorned, don't look down on, and a lot of evil things going on. And the walls of Jerusalem are being demolished, and its gates were burnt. Now, these gates were giant buildings, really. They could be 10 foot by 10 foot. You walk inside of them. The gate was actually a wooden, like kind of a gate that came down and closed that place. But the real gate is way bigger than just a gate that we think of in a fence. And then Nehemiah prays to the Lord when he hears this. And when I have this in red, Nehemiah prays to the Lord in Nehemiah 1, 4-11, that means there's no scriptures printed out where we can read. So it just lets you know you can go there and find out what his prayer is. We're not going through the book of Nehemiah per se. We've already done that. And this is a part of the timeline just to see how what's happening, the major events between the exile and Jesus. So what happens next? Nehemiah says in chapter 2, verse 1, it came to pass in the month of Nisan, the 20th year of Arthasasta, who I believe is Cyrus, the king, not Artaxerxes as the King James has it, that the wine was before him. And Nehemiah said earlier he was a wine server. And I took the wine and gave it to the king, and there was not another before him. And the king said to me, why is your face in a sorry state, and you're not content? For is this not, unless there is a sorrowful heart? And I was afraid exceedingly much, because apparently he didn't want to show anything bad to the king, the bad side, something upset him. And I said to the king, O king, live into the eon. Why should not my face be in a sorry? For the city, the house of the sepulchres of my fathers, was made desolate, Jerusalem, and its gates were devoured by fire. And the king said to me, well, for what is this you seek? And I prayed to the Lord God of heaven. Good idea. We should all be praying for to the Lord when we're faced with any type of adversity or a question of what we should do, how we should act. Not only just to pray for something material or a healing, but even our actions, which guidance. And I said to the king, well, if it be upon the king for good, and if your servant shall seem good before you, so as to send him to Judah, to the city of the sepulchres of my fathers, then I'll rebuild it. And the king said to me and his concubine sitting next to him, well, for how long will you be going? And when will you return? Apparently he liked them. And it was good before the king. And he sent me, and I gave to him a confirmation. And I said to the king, if it be upon the king for good, let him give to me letters to the chief rulers on the other side of the river, which was a good idea, because they didn't want to see the Jews return. And so as to allow me to pass until I come into Judah. Well, so this letter was actually like a pass, even through other lands. And a letter to Asaph, the keeper of the garden, which is to the king, so as to give to me wood to roof the gates of the palace of the house, and for the wall of the city, and for the house, the temple, for which I shall enter unto it. Asaph, the keeper of the garden of the materials in Susa, in Persia. And the king gave to me by the good hand of God upon me. So now he has materials, a letter to go back, get him through the places that would stop him, and an approval to do what the king wants him to do in Jerusalem. So now he arrives in Jerusalem, chapter 2, verse 9. And I came to the chief rulers on the other side of the river and gave to them the letters of the king. And the king sent with me chiefs of the force, the army, a small contingent, and horsemen. So now he's there, and the rulers were a Sanballat and Tobiah, men that, I think Tobiah was an Ammonite, that is from Jordan today, and Sanballat was a person, I believe, that came from the Assyrian diaspora way earlier, when the Assyrians moved people around. For whoever they conquered, they moved the people to another place and back and forth. Sanballat the Horonite heard of it, and Tobiah the bondman, the Ammonite, and it was a bad thing to them that it happened. They didn't want to see these Jews coming back. Jews aren't well liked by most people in the world, even today. We have Israel coming against Hamas in the Gaza Strip because of Hamas's attack against kibbutzes in Israel and slaughtering a lot of innocent people. And you would think, well, the whole world is going to be against Hamas. They did terrible things. Poor Israel, a little bitty postage stamp country, a little small country. But no, everybody in the world, all the countries, the United Nations, are against what Israel is doing. And it seems like this has happened in history. And this goes back to the blessings and the curses on Mount Gerizim, where I think was the blessings, and Ebal was the curses, and the curses where this would happen to Israel. They would be hated by all the peoples in the world. And this is of God. And so now I just was reading in the I think it was Jerusalem Post, how they're trying to prove that the curses on Mount Ebal aren't necessarily what they seem to be. It seems like the Jews are always trying to make the Bible something that is wrong or not true. It's mythology. I mean, I've talked to Jews, and they've said, well, this is just a bunch of myth stories. They're not, these things didn't really happen. And a lot of the Jews today, anti-Semitic is what they're called, self-loathing Jews that don't want anything to do with Judaism, and they're the biggest enemy, I think, to the Jews in the Bible. And then so these people here didn't want to see him come back either. And they were grieved that a man comes to seek good to the sons of Israel. Yeah, according to the curse on Mount Ebal. And I came unto Jerusalem. So now he's in Jerusalem, and it says now he goes and reconnoiters Jerusalem by himself and a few men. And I went forth from the gate of Gai at night to the mouth of the spring of the dragon, and to the dung gate. And I was studying the walls of Jerusalem having been torn down, and her gates having been consumed by fire. So he sees all these things that need to be fixed. So what does he do? He goes to the Jews there and tells them what Cyrus ordered. And it says, and I reported to them the hand of God, and it's not him, but God, which is good upon me, and the words of the king, which he spoke. Cyrus sent him back to rebuild the wall. Now you can go into chapter 3, and it has all the information on repairing the wall. And then it says in chapter 6:15, and the wall was finished the 5th and 20th of the month Elul, in 50 days. So now the wall is done. Many people came against him when they were building it. You can read about that in chapter 6. Chapter 7, he sets up a government, and then they rededicate the wall. And this is interesting because today, I believe, is Hanukkah in Israel. In Hanukkah, the Jews today, of course, don't go along with the Bible. They go along with the Torah, which is the laws of Moses, which they can't possibly fulfill because there's no temple or priesthood. But Hanukkah, they have it where I think it was Antiochus Epiphanes during the Maccabees. The Maccabees attacked and destroyed the Greeks and then rededicated the temple in Jerusalem. That's what they say Hanukkah is, but I don't think it is at all. I think it's this here, right here in the Bible, the rededication of the wall. It was a big thing. And it says, and in the rededication of the wall of Jerusalem, they sought out the Levites in their places to bring them into Jerusalem from around the area to observe the rededication with gladness and in praise and in odes, playing cymbals and psalteries and lutes. And now you can go in here and you can find out how this rededication went. It was really a big thing. All these Levites went along the wall with their trumpets and lutes and everything, and the sound was going up, and down below were all the people, and Ezra started to speak to them, which we'll go into in the book of Ezra. And so they were rededicating. This is the rededication, not the Greek general being defeated by the Maccabees. And then it says, and then at that time, it says, and during all this, I was not in Jerusalem. Now, this 13:6 isn't nothing to do with this part up here. He was there then, but it starts talking about how this priest, Eliashib, starts to take all the money from the people instead of giving it that was going to the rebuilding the temple and to the Levites. And he was taking it for himself, set up a treasury in the temple. And Nehemiah says he wasn't there when that was happening. For in the 2nd and 30th year of Arthashasta, Cyrus, king of Babylon, went to the king. So he goes back to Babylon. He's king of Babylon. He probably went back to Persia, but Cyrus did defeat Babylon. And basically he became a king of Babylon also. And after the end of days, I asked things of the king. So he comes back, and what does he see? And I came to Jerusalem, and I perceived in the wickedness what Eliashib did for Tobiah to make for him a treasury in the courtyards of the house of God, for money, get him for himself. And it appeared exceedingly wicked to me, and I tossed all the items of the house of Tobiah outside of the treasury. And I spoke, and they cleansed the treasuries, and I returned there the vessels of the house of God. And you can go into that on how he cleansed that. And then it goes on. He deals with the tithes not being given in chapter 13, 10 to 14. And there's a lot of things in here that are spiritual that are really not in the timeline, but just to show you what they are, there's a quarreling over the servitude, putting the Jews in slavery by the rich Jews. Then Ezra, a story about Ezra reading the scroll in front of the water gate on a wooden rostrum. Get into that in Ezra. The holiday of tents, the separation of alien sons, children that weren't Jewish. Ezra recounts Israel's history, the separation of the intermixed peoples that intermarried. And Nehemiah deals with the Sabbath being profaned by the people that weren't Jews around there, bringing their goods to sell on the Sabbath outside of the walls of Jerusalem. And Nehemiah deals with that. And he deals with the priests, the Jewish priests, with alien wives and children. So that's also in the book. And then lists. We have lists of sons of the captivity, a list of rulers who set seal to the trust, who went along with everything, a list of lots cast over who will live in Jerusalem, a list of the priests and Levites ascending with Zerubbabel. Now, we haven't mentioned Zerubbabel, but Zerubbabel is a person during this period of time who apparently led the people back. Nehemiah set the whole thing up, and Zerubbabel apparently came with all these people, and they brought him along with Joshua, the priest, which we'll be mentioning when we get into Ezra. And then we'll have a seminar on Zerubbabel and one on Joshua. And then Artaxerxes, and well, you'll find out when you go to follow these, which I hope you do. And the next video again will be on Ezra, and I hope you join us. Till then, God bless.